Hello everybody, this is myself, Shannon Houle. I am a counselor with Saddle Lake Cree Nation, and this is my personal reflection on what happened on February 7th, 2014 at Kainai High School on the Blood Tribe Reserve. I feel that I need to video record my personal account of what happened. Today is Sunday. It is Sunday, February 9th, 2014. So it's been about 2 days since this Stephen Harper, Prime Minister Harper's announcement with the First Nations education platform, or whatever you want to call it. Proposed act. I guess what I wanted to share was a little bit of how I got involved in leading up to this whole announcement, and in that, just to be clear, I went as a proxy chief for our chief, Leonard Jackson, and that's how I went. That's how I got into the meeting, actually, because what happened was it was about a couple of days on social media. Wednesday I heard about Prime Minister Harper was going to Kainai Nation Blood Tribe, and just kind of watched it on social media. Then what happened was on Friday, we were actually going to send our education director to the event just to see what's going on. We weren't sure what the announcement was going to be or what was going to happen. So that's when we were going to be sending our education director over there. Friday afternoon, our chief had given me a call and said that he got an invitation, and that Confederacy of Treaty 6 was invited to attend this event, and he was unable to attend, so he asked me to be proxy. So I immediately left Thursday night, or it was actually Thursday, not Friday, sorry. And what happened was I left, and we weren't sure what was happening. Also, the email just said we were invited, and that was about as much as Confederacy knew what was happening, that there was going to be an announcement. We weren't sure what type of announcement. When I arrived at Kainai Nation, we were directed another route. When we arrived, Prime Minister Harper was just arriving through helicopter, and we made our way inside. I came with with Janice McCocus. She's also a lawyer for our band. Well, she's a lawyer. She's a member of our band, but she's a lawyer. Also, Dr. James McCocus, who is one of our physicians in our nation. So they came along with me, and when we went there, they couldn't get in. It was only they said invited guests and such, so I had to go in, and I showed my ID. They didn't have my name written down, so I had to show a business card, so that's what I did. I was immediately directed to the announce auditorium with my yellow, I was given a yellow dot to wear. Apparently other people were given a blue dot, and then they were directed to the gymnasium, which I wasn't aware of. There was a gymnasium at that point, where it was or anything. When I went into the room, the auditorium room, there was already starting to be a lot of people that came in, and immediately I went to the front of the auditorium to try and find where our seats were, because far as we knew, we were invited guests. So I noticed there was starting to be names on the seats, so I started to read all the names and found out where Prime Minister Harper, Chief Atleo, the other chiefs, where the oil companies were sitting behind Stephen Harper and Atleo, and then where the Blood Tribe council members were sitting. On the other side were seats for senators, and certain, didn't recognize all their names. But right behind the podium was where a lot of the chiefs were sitting, and like special invited guests like Willy Littlechild, and we had some AFN chiefs there, also from different treaty areas. When I arrived on there was no seating. We didn't have, there was Chief James Jackson, myself, and our Grand Chief from Treaty 6 Confederacy, Chief Mackinac, did not have a seat. So I proceeded to look for someone who was organizing this event to find where we're supposed to sit, because I didn't, as chiefs and proxies, from what it was looking like, they should be in the front area. So that's when I went and let these people know that we were there. So they directed us to some seats that were actually directly behind Chief Atleo's family, where his father was sitting, and I recognized two other people with the same last name as Atleo, and then with another woman. I'm not sure what her role was or who she was, but we were sitting right behind them. And when the chiefs all started sitting down, and I had went and shook some people's hands, like Mike Weaselhead from Blood Tribe, and a few other people that I knew, and it seemed like everyone was kind of familiar with each other. The people who are normally in Parliament, senators, and the Reconciliation team, and chiefs and Grand Chiefs, and that, and they were all just talking, and everybody was kind of visiting and stuff, and that. What happened was when the chiefs started sitting down, it was about 11 o'clock, and I noticed as they put on their headdresses, there was, most of the chiefs were all in front, and they had the elders and children behind on a stage, and it looked pretty coordinated area. The way the seating was looking, and I was looking at it, yeah, it was pretty coordinated on how media would see the view, with the way the podium was sitting, chiefs sitting behind with elders, and then the children standing in the back on stage. It looked like everyone was pretty much part of this whole announcement. But from talking to different people, majority of everybody didn't know what was going to be happening. They had no idea what the announcement was going to be or anything. So everyone was kind of not sure. All they knew was they were invited, so we weren't too sure what was happening. Then when I noticed those chiefs were sitting and they had their headdresses on, I had noticed our two chiefs, a few of our chiefs, James Jackson and Chief Mackinac, were holding their headdresses still, and sitting behind. So I got up and I went and asked the same woman again, But before that, I went and asked the Secret Service that was standing to the right of me, and letting them know that it's not too good that our chiefs are in the back here. So she told me to go ask somebody else. So I went and asked somebody else, and I said, we've got a couple of chiefs here, and their headdressers are there, and every chief is up front there. So why are our chiefs in the back here? So what she did was she moved our chiefs to the front, one on one side, to the far side where Harper was going to come in, and then the other one, James Jackson, close to where I was on the other side of the stage. So there were all the chiefs in the front. Us chief proxies, myself and co-lake proxy Cecil Janvier was on the left side of me, and we just stayed there, and then Chief Jackson's wife and Chief Mackinac wife and a few staff from Confederacy of Treaty 6 were sitting with us. So I guess everybody was pretty much, a lot of people didn't know what was happening, where they were going. It was all short notice from what I was hearing, and they just knew a few days, some of them not even a few days, of what was going on. So when Prime Minister Harper and Chief Atleo and that all, and the grand entry, kind of a grand entry, came in, they all sat down, and then Chief Weasel had spoke and welcomed everybody to the territory and area, and spoke a little bit about this is a new change, good thing for children, education, and then Prime Minister Harper got up and spoke and talked about the $1.9 billion that's going to education. He brought up the Indian residential school speech that he made in 2008, and that this was he was going to be changing some of the Indian Act. I think it was him who said that, or Valcourt, that they were going to be changing the Indian Act under which the Indian residential school was under there. It was sounding all good as we were going along, and I was trying to keep an open mind, considering my understanding of the Education Act and how that's going to affect us, because of course Saddle Lake Cree Nation has opposed on all levels the First Nations Education Act, plus the Memorandum of Understanding that was through Alberta, and we've been making that public for a while. We've been bringing that to meetings. We've also brought that in January. I know myself and the other councillor, Shannon Houle, expressed that to the ministers, Alberta ministers also. I know Education Johnston and the other ones, Oberley, Aboriginal Affairs. We explained to them that we opposed it at the current standing. It was interesting that this First Nations Education Act was coming up, and as I was listening to Prime Minister Harper speak, they said they came to an agreement. There was an agreement, and immediately it's like, oh, well, what's this agreement? Because we have no idea what that agreement was on our part. So we had already voted no to it from the Confederacy level also. So we had no clue what this was that they were going to be saying they came to an agreement with on Treaty 6. Then Mr. Valcourt, our Minister Valcourt, spoke in that for a while. Then when Chief Atleo spoke he was going on about that this was a good thing also. But when he started talking about on-reserve funding being improved, and the more and more he spoke, all I remember looking around and thinking, okay, this is wrong. There's a lot of things here that just aren't making sense. Because what happens to the children who are off reserve? You know, what happens to the treaty? We have already made a treaty in 1876, and why are they trying to change it? All we've been asking from the beginning is them to honor the treaty, and that hasn't been happening. We've been below funding, yes, that's true, and they acknowledged that they were going to increase it. But when you think about 1.9 billion over 7 years, it's not really that much. And so we were, as I'm listening, it was sounding really good. They were really doing talk, but you know, the questions started coming up a lot, especially AFN has no jurisdiction to speak on treaties. So that was what was kind of getting to me about, and we've said that before. There's no other organizations do not have the mandate to speak on treaty except for a nation that had signed with treaty. So that's why there's an issue with Canada, because that we never signed the treaties with Canada. So and also Alberta didn't exist, but the proposed FNEA that was being brought forward before was giving all powers to the province. The minister would have all say. If they didn't agree with anything that was happening on the reserves, they could take over the schools and even the land involved in that. So it was kind of interesting as they were going along. There was a lot of questions I was interested to find out, because they were talking, as they were talking, it was talking like everything's going to be happening later on, but in the meantime 2015 is going to be a election year. So it all sounds nice on paper, but history has told us that the government doesn't keep their promises, and they like to dictate every cent that's ever used. And then what happens, what we find on the reserve is we're reporting 2 to 3 times more than other other companies, off reserve organizations. And as a result, we spend a lot of time reporting our money. And then what happens through these agreements and these, they really dictate our money, everything that's been spent. So it does, a lot of times money doesn't get where it's supposed to, or money should be. We still have lowest paying teachers. There's a lot of things that are happening. Our schools are deteriorating. There's just not enough supports. You know, we don't even have all our schools hooked up to wireless internet or internet. There's just a lot of barriers that they're challenged with. And like I said, the 1 billion was sounding great, but when you crunch numbers, you kind of start looking at numbers, and it's not really that much. And then when you look at something that happens over 7 years, as they were talking, I was kind of getting curious. Okay, if this is going to be happening after 7 years, then what happens after that? We've seen from the government before, what they do is they give us so much money. Perfect example is traditional land use, for instance. You know, they gave us money for 3 years, and then that was it. Cut. Done. They've done that with a lot of programs. My other question that I was having was, where is this 1.9 billion coming from? Because all these programs across Turtle Island are getting cut. All these Aboriginal programs. You look at the health got cut. these health organizations. Reconciliation will be ending. There's so many programs. All we hear about it almost monthly, weekly, got cut. You look at Manitoba has been getting cut. Different councils are getting cut. Different organizations like Confederate got cut. Tribal Chiefs in Alberta got cut. You know, AFN got their funding cut. There's all these organizations that are getting cut funding. And then they're saying they're going to give us money. So where is this money going to come from? That's my question. And then as the Prime Minister, as they're talking, and they're talking about how the Prime Minister was talking about, you know, making sure that elementary and secondary schools, that the children graduate to be functioning workers within society. You know, he was gearing that towards industry. So what about post-secondary? I know on my nation of Saddle Lake, we have one of the highest graduates in post-secondary education. So what about those ones? What we're experiencing too is in the schools, they're pushing our children on reserve, off reserve, towards industry, trades, jobs. Forget post-secondary jobs. We have colleges that are being threatened with funding. Blue Coast First Nations College, Yellowhead Tribal College. There's a whole bunch of them that are getting their funding affected. So there was just so many questions. I wasn't convinced as the speeches went on, and as Atlio spoke more and more. All I know is that as I'm sitting there, every part of me was telling me this was wrong. Somebody needs to speak up. It just was incredible. Like I was having a hard time sitting there listening as they were going along. And as we were going, I leaned over to one of the people sitting beside me and asked, well, you know, what could they do if I spoke? You know, he said, it's a free country. It's freedom of speech. What can they do? That's what we say we are. So all I know is that as I was sitting there, every part of me was telling me this was wrong. I felt it in my bones. I felt it in everything. My heart was beating because I knew this was wrong. It was like, it was screaming, wrong, wrong. And then when Atlio turned and started naming our chiefs and the territories they're from, I lost it because I saw what he was doing. He was setting it up for Canada and everybody to make it look like everybody in that room was accepting and agreeing to this First Nations agreement they came upon. And I know there's a lot of nations that object to it, especially nations that have treaty, that know AFN has no jurisdiction to speak on treaty. So when he named our chiefs in Treaty 6, I could not hold myself back anymore. And all I was doing was trying to find the right moment, being respectful, because that's what I saw also, was they were using our ways of respect to keep us quiet. The way they positioned everybody, they positioned our chiefs, they positioned our elders, they positioned the children. Just the way they set that up, they were making sure that we did not say anything, that we kept in line. And that was just the one thing that made it hard for me, that I struggled with, in my heart was not to be disrespectful. I understood the territory I was on and did not want to offend. But at the same time, I had to think of the children. I had to think of the future. I had to think of our treaties, because they were made with our nations, with nation-to-nation agreement, and all I could hear in my head, in my heart, was that our ancestors were screaming that this was wrong. This was absolutely wrong. And I had to speak out. I had no choice. I knew, I just knew that there was going to be repercussions, and I was willing to live with them, but I had to speak. I have a grandchild, I have a child, and I needed to guarantee their future, because that's what our ancestors did when they signed treaties. And they did not do it foolishly. They did it in ceremony. They bound those treaties, the spirit and intent of that pipe, in the presence of the Creator. They made those ceremonies, and they bound those treaties, not with man, but with the Creator. And I had to say something, and I could not allow our treaties to become domesticated and downsized or washed, or whatever the terms people want to use. And that's when I spoke up and put my hand on my heart and held my arm up and told Chief Atleo, I object. As a descendant of Treaty 6 signer, Chief Bakan, I needed to let him know, and that our nation objects to this First Nations Education Act, and that he had no jurisdiction to speak on our behalf as treaty, under Treaty 6, and that he needed to know that. And as a grandmother and a mother, and that's important to know too, is as a grandmother, I have that right to speak on behalf of my children and the land. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about our education, it's about the land. Because these agreements are tied into our land, taking us and moving us into domesticated areas, municipalities on our reserves. And that is not just the only reason. Because at the beginning, since we signed treaty, all we've ever asked is them to honor those treaties. In one of the treaties also state that we were not to be replacing our teachings, our education system already that we've been doing for thousands of years, and not to be replaced with a foreign system that does not work for us. Because our laws, our education is bound by the Creator, was gifted to us by the Creator. And that's why I had to speak out, because they have not honored the treaties. They've been forcing their system on us, and that is the reason why you have high dropouts. That's why you have our children who have a hard time finishing school, because you're trying to make them conform to you. You're trying to assimilate us, and that is just not gonna happen anymore. And that's why I had to say what I did. And I spoke, and I thought why I had to speak up. And after Atleo responded to me, and that's what he did too, he used our ways to convince everybody that I'm in the wrong by saying, yes, we respect, as we do as people. Okay, well, respect your own people. Stand up for us. Oh my God. It was just unbelievable. And what forced me to speak was because I knew this ceremony was about to happen, and I know how ceremonies are bound. And for him to bind this when we obviously a whole nations have been objecting, and I'm not my only nation. I know a lot of nations that are objecting all across Turtle Island. Canada has been advised over and over again not to do this. They keep trying to assimilate us. And that's why I had to speak before Chief Atleo's father started the drum. I had to say it. We had to show that we objected and not let all of Canada think that we are all good little Indians and we're gonna just accept it and that it's good for us. No. No. So after the ceremony, they had a question period and I refused to sit. I stood with my hands like this during the ceremony because that was not right. I did not accept that agreement that Chief Atleo did with Harper, with Chief Weaselhead and Atleo on that paddle, because that was not right at all. It just was not right. And then when Stephen Harper spoke, I still didn't sit down. I just crossed my hands and I looked at him, and as he responded, it was just, I just shook my head because that wasn't right either, like the way he was speaking and the way people were looking, some were looking at me, and I felt alone. And right after I spoke, I asked the Creator and all the people who do ceremony to please protect me, please. And all I thought about too was Elijah Harper, one of my heroes, Elijah Harper. That's all I could think about. So, after the event started and Stephen Harper went, they left the room. They started media. Asked me to go over, and I spoke to media. I let them know that AFN has no jurisdiction over our education, over treaty. I also let them know that they need to start changing their thought pattern, that they know what's good for the Indian, because they don't. We know what's good for us, and we'll tell you what's good for us and what we need. The other thing that I told the media was that as a teacher, former teacher, I know what it's like to work without all the resources. I know what it's like to have to struggle when our children need extra assistance and we don't have the funding. I know what it's like to not have internet. Just last year, the food program got cut. There's just a lot of problems with and I chose to work on reserve, and because I chose to work on reserve at that time, I had to accept less salary than teachers who work off reserve, and that's a fact. Also, and this another thing that they're trying to portray to the general public, that we don't have the same education as off-reserve teachers. That is absolutely not true. We have to get the same type of degree as anybody who has to work off-reserve, but we also have additional degree information as an Indigenous person. If you go into an Indigenous program like Aboriginal Teachers Education Program like I did, we also get additional information and training to implement our culture and our language and our ways into the curriculum. So they cannot say that we don't have the same education. We do. The only problem is that we don't follow. We have to pay into to get certified. We still got to go through everybody else does in provinces to get certified. We have to go through 2 years of training to get certified. The other thing that happens is that we have to pay to the ATA organization, but we do not have the same protections or rights as on reserve schools. So they can't pass their jurisdiction over to us on our reserve schools. And that's what that kind of makes it where we're not as protected on the schools regarding other teachers, and that's a flaw for sure. But like I said, we've have our own education. We've had it for thousands of years. It worked for us. The reason when we signed treaties was not to replace our system, but to add the settlers' system to ours, not to change who we are. Our ancestors signed those treaties so that we would have opportunity to be successful as more settlers came, that we would be able to be part of the society as well functioning as we always have and always will be. And as a result of Indian residential school effects, this also contributes to a breakdown of our systems in our nations. And that's one thing that is one of the major obstacles for us as teachers in the schools, is we have broken down families also. And that's a result of Indian residential schools. So, there's a lot of things that they mentioned in this speech that was very true in how things are happening, but at the same time it was half-truths. Majority of it was so half-truth. There's so much information that's missing from the general public to get them to understand what's happening. I would love if Stephen Harper brought his children and their teenagers to come to school, come to our school, come and do that in our. We'll teach you. We'll teach your children, and you tell us how good, the opportunities they have, because we have low funding or we're limited in so many stuff. It's just crazy. There's just so many reasons why this whole thing was wrong. And so that's what happened. Another thing that happened was right after, one thing I did tell Sun News was I told them I didn't want them to record me because they're a racist paper. And they need to know that, because I know my band has boycotted them. Saddle Lake Cree Nation has boycotted the Sun News and newspapers. We've also put that forward with the United Nations. We did that complaint. That was part of it. We were included in that, with the media being racist within Canada. The other thing that happened was one of the ladies from Treaty 7 territory, her name is Jacqueline Cauliflower, introduced herself and said that, asked me if I was from Treaty 6. I said yes. And then she said that the elders and the council were offended and felt disrespected by me and what I did, and that I was not allowed on Treaty 7 territory, and that I was not allowed to participate in their feast, and that I had to leave the premises immediately. And so after that she walked away, and then media, we had finished with media, and I went and talked to a few other people, Lily Gadwa and Mrs. Buffalo from Samson. And then I went and got my jacket. And when I was leaving, when I was trying to leave, I went to the washroom. And when I went into the washroom, what happened was Jacqueline Cauliflower was in there with a few elderly ladies. It's about 3 of them. And so I went to the washroom, came out, and that's when she asked me again, so how are you doing? And I said, I'm fine. I'm doing fine. And then she says, well, I just want to tell you again that what you did was just absolutely disrespectful, and we would never do that in your territory, and we have no tolerance for that in Treaty 7 territory. And she said there's a right time and right place for everything. And I explained to her, when is the right time? You know, when is the right time to speak up and let our voices be heard? And she said there's always a right time. And I said, well, this was obviously the right time then. And then she left the room, and I just followed behind her and left. I went, and there was 2 ladies and a gentleman that was standing there. I couldn't leave where I had came in from. There was looked like they were going to be getting ready for a grand entry. They're all standing there. And then there was food, kind of in the atrium there. They had tables and stuff. But there was a couple of ladies that were volunteers, and they thanked me and welcomed me to Treaty 7. Told me that they were getting ready to eat, to make sure I eat, and I let them know that I was told that I have to leave and that I'm not welcome here. And they said that Jacqueline could not speak on their behalf, so that I was welcome in that. So I stayed there. I was waiting, and then the former premier of Northwest Territories was there, and we were talking for a while about their education system. Then what happened was the Secret Service come there, and they told us to move over because we were standing right in front of the men's bathroom. So we moved over to the other side of the hallway there, and then the chief Prime Minister Harper come in with his Secret Service, and then he passed right beside me, right beside me. Went into the bathroom, and we just continued talking, and then he came out again, and then he went back to the other way towards the gymnasium. Right after he passed us, the chief of police of the Blood Tribe came, and with another gentleman from the Blood Tribe police, and informed me that I was to be leave the premises. And he said that I was told that Chief and Council has said that I have to leave the premises. So I said, okay. So I said, but I can't leave there because that's blocked off. And then they says, well, we'll take you out the back way, the other way. So I went down the other hallway, and then they let me know that they asked me where I was from. So I told them, and then they informed me. One said he worked for Onion Lake, and then the other one said he worked in St. Paul before, so they were familiar with where I was from. So, and then they thanked me for cooperating and they apologized that they had to do this, but they thanked me again for cooperating, and I just told them, well, not every day you get escorted out of a facility. So I said okay, and when I was walking out, the other Blood Tribe opened all 4 doors. There was about 6 of them, and I just asked them when I was walking out, will anybody else want to keep following me? And when I walked out, I was surprised there was not as many protesters out there. I thought there would be a lot more protesters out there. And when I got there, I saw these people, and they were I found out that a lot of the protesters were not allowed in. And then we were standing there, and people were coming out, and protesters were yelling at them, shaming them, and stuff like that. And then more and more people kept coming out from the back side of the school because they had just gotten kicked out. And it was crazy. Like, the people just kept. I didn't know what was happening at this point, like inside. I didn't know they were kicking out people, and I just thought I was the only one that got kicked out. and one of the gentlemen come walking by. I was with Arnell Tail Feathers. We're standing, and Brent, his name is Brent Scout or Stout, and he walks by, didn't even look at me, just didn't look at us, just kind of went wah wah wah, and then kept walking. Didn't even look at us, wasn't even facing us, and he just kept going. And we just kind of looked at each other and didn't say nothing. And then what happened was Chief Charlie Weasel had come out, and the protesters followed him, chased him, and screaming at him. At this point, I didn't know what they were yelling at. What they were yelling, I was already a little bit away. And we were getting ready to leave. At that point, I didn't know what else to do, but that we had to get going. And I hadn't eaten all day, so by then it was already the afternoon, and I was getting hungry. So we were starting to get ready to leave, and there was just lots going on. So I didn't know whether I had no idea what was going to be happening next at all. So that was my count of what happened. We left and we started on our way home, and that's what happened on February 7th, 2014 at Kainai Nation at the Harper announcement, which Treaty 6 objects to, and for sure Saddle Lake Cree Nation. I know that our Confederacy on the Alberta side objects, and I know a lot of nations on the BC side, Alberta side, also object. I know there's different nations across these lands that object, and I needed to say that because all Canada needed to know that not everybody was consulted or discussed, and that's the thing. When treaties were signed, those chiefs were there. So what is this thing about thinking you can only talk to one chief across all these nations across Canada? Does not make sense. Maybe you gotta stop being lazy and meeting all of us on equal ground, and stop acting like you're better than us. Like, we're nations. We made that agreement with the Queen. Canada, you're a successor state. Understand that. You don't own any land. You don't have your own laws. That's just the way it is. Aye. And all I can say to everybody else is please speak up. Please learn what's going on. There's more to this than just the FNEA. There's the legislation that's going through. There's all of this stuff that's happening that is just degrading us, and it's going to turn us into municipalities. Every agreement that's coming through the system, through these legislations and these other agreements they're passing through our reserves, all at the base of all of those is our land. They're trying to domesticate us. We're already calculating that by 2048, 50, we're not going to have any more people that are going to be allowed to be registered in the reserves at the rate the government is forcing their Indian Act policy of assimilation and genocide on us. And that is the truth. This is a genocidal attack on our people. It's been happening for hundreds of years, and we need to stop it. And we need to stop it now. They do not like the Indian getting smart. Not that we weren't smart, but they don't like us getting smart in their system. That's what they don't like. We know how to talk their language. They don't know how to talk ours. And at the end of the day, we are people that follow a law that is not man's law, it's Creator's law and Mother Earth's law. And I don't know how much more I can explain. We can do this. We need to all stand strong. And I need to express that this is not about territories. This is not about disrespecting Treaty 7 territory. I did not want to do that. All I could do was speak on my territory. That's all I could do. I couldn't speak for everybody across Canada. But I knew I couldn't do that. And I wanted to honor those other nations. They need to speak up. They need to please speak up. Don't let the government hold these little rations and these trinkets in front of us anymore. Our children are dying. Our children are starving. They need direction. Please. Be who we always were. Nations. Nations, nations, nations.